I am Lauren Whitaker, 32, and literally last weekend, my lifelong role as the family's easy target? Yeah, it totally backfired when I discovered my parents and sister Harper stole and sold my fiancé Daniel's priceless engagement ring, the last piece he ever designed before the accident, to fund Harper's Instagram-worthy Bali retreat. The ring I'd guarded fiercely since Daniel passed, the one tangible piece of our future he'd crafted with his own hands, vanished just like that. And when I confronted my family at Sunday brunch in front of half of Boston's well-dressed brunch crowd, well, let's just say, things got explosive. "Are you accusing us of stealing?" Mom hissed, eyes darting nervously around the cafe as if our family reputation hinged on the nosy couple at the next table. "You stole Daniel's ring, Mom," I said, forcing my voice steady despite the rage building beneath the surface. "It wasn't yours to sell." Harper gave a dramatic sigh, rolling her eyes so hard I was surprised they didn't stick. "Honestly, Lauren, it was just gathering dust in your drawer. Daniel would have wanted me to experience life after all I've been through." My chest tightened sharply. "All you've been through? Really?" Dad cut me off, waving a dismissive hand. "We can replace it, Lauren. It's just jewelry." "Just jewelry?" I repeated, heart hammering, blood hot under my skin. Daniel's last design, his legacy, his love, reduced to a few disposable dollars to fund Harper's poolside selfies? My fists clenched beneath the table, nails pressing crescent-shaped indentations into my palms. "You sold my fiancé's memory to pay for Harper's vacation," I snapped, voice louder now, fury overriding caution. Suddenly, I was painfully aware of dozens of eyes darting toward us, whispers catching like flames. Mom's perfectly applied lipstick quivered as she forced a tight smile toward our watching audience, her voice dropping into a desperate whisper. "You're making a scene, Lauren. Stop being so dramatic." "You're worried about me being dramatic?" I laughed bitterly, raising my voice just enough to carry. "You stole from your own daughter. From me, the daughter who lost everything. And you expect me to be quiet about it?" Harper's glossy eyes widened as she hissed, "This is why no one can deal with you anymore. Daniel died 2 years ago. Move on." My heart stopped for a painful second. She'd weaponized Daniel's death before, but never this publicly, never this viciously. Anger crashed through me, but beneath it was an unexpected clarity, an undeniable truth. They didn't see me, didn't care, never had. To them, I was always the inconvenience, the emotional one, the outsider clinging to a past they'd happily discard for a good Instagram caption. "You know what?" I rose slowly, carefully pushing back the chair. "I'm done pretending this family cares about anything other than appearances. And since you've made your priorities crystal clear, let me make mine. I will never forgive this betrayal." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's horrified whisper echoed clearly, "You're ruining our family, Lauren." But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost, you wouldn't believe what they'll do once I decide to disappear. The truth is that explosive brunch wasn't a one-time thing. It was just the latest chapter in a lifetime of being overlooked. Growing up, my family's expectations were like a perfectly scripted drama, with roles clearly defined. Harper was the dazzling lead actress, my parents the doting directors, and me? I was the understudy, quietly rehearsing in the shadows, but never invited on stage. When Harper got into Boston College on a legacy admission, my parents threw a party at our country club, hiring a private chef and decking out the ballroom in maroon and gold. They toasted her incredible achievement, conveniently forgetting the sizable donation Dad made just weeks before. Meanwhile, when I earned a scholarship to Rhode Island School of Design, the top design school in the country, they barely glanced up from their phones. "Is that even a real college?" Harper had snickered. Mom just patted my hand dismissively, murmuring, "I'm sure you'll have fun, Lauren," her tone dripping with condescension. Every achievement, every moment of pride was dulled, undermined, or simply ignored. I won a citywide design contest my senior year, and my parents didn't even show up to the ceremony. Instead, they took Harper out for sushi because she'd landed a summer internship sorting files at Dad's law firm, another stepping stone on their carefully paved path for her. "Lauren, honey," Mom said later, handing me the glossy program from my ceremony without a shred of irony. "Sorry we couldn't make it. Harper really needed encouragement today." I stared at the program, its thick paper feeling unbearably heavy in my hands. Right, of course. But the worst part was realizing that Daniel had always seen what they refused to acknowledge. He celebrated every tiny win with me, from landing my first boutique client to being featured in a local magazine's Designers to Watch. He'd frame the clippings, proudly displaying them in our little apartment, filling me with warmth every time I glanced at them. "You deserve to be seen, Lauren," he'd whisper, holding my face tenderly after every disappointment, gently wiping away tears I was ashamed to shed. "And one day, everyone else will see exactly what I see." And then suddenly, Daniel was gone, killed in an accident just 2 weeks after our engagement. My world collapsed overnight, a darkness seeping into my bones that even breathing felt impossible. But instead of comfort, I received pressure from my family to move on, to stop being dramatic and holding on to grief, as if Daniel's death was just another inconvenient disruption in their carefully controlled narrative. Yet in those bleak moments, something unexpected happened. I began creating again. My grief poured itself into metal and gemstones, each delicate piece of jewelry echoing Daniel's memory and the raw, honest emotion that I'd been conditioned to hide. I kept these creations hidden, terrified my family would mock or minimize them. But quietly, word spread, first through friends, then to collectors, and soon my pieces became sought-after whispers among Boston's elite. Even still, I kept the extent of my success secret, determined not to share this vulnerable triumph until I felt ready. But after the ring betrayal, something had irrevocably shifted. They'd stolen more than Daniel's final gift. They'd stolen my patience, my silence, my willingness to endure invisibility. I was finally ready to step fully into the spotlight, but this time it would be on my terms, not theirs. The night I decided to transform my grief into jewelry was the kind of memory that stays tattooed beneath your skin forever. Painful, beautiful, unforgettable. I'd been sitting alone in the dark silence of the apartment Daniel and I once shared, haunted by half-empty closets and shelves filled with his books. My fingers traced the bare space on my left hand where the engagement ring had briefly lived, now an unbearable emptiness. "You always wanted me to shine," I whispered, picturing his soft, reassuring smile. "How am I supposed to do that without you?" My eyes caught the corner of Daniel's workspace, still cluttered with sketches and tiny metal tools that felt achingly alive with his lingering energy. On impulse, I pulled myself from the couch, padding barefoot toward the cluttered bench. I flicked on the desk lamp, squinting as it illuminated a chaotic brilliance, scattered gemstones, unfinished sketches, scraps of metal shining dimly, each piece of him crying out for attention. Without thinking, I sat down, picked up a tiny silver loop and held it between trembling fingers. I'd watched Daniel work countless times, mesmerized by the way he transformed meaningless scraps into breathtaking treasures. Yet, until that night, I'd never dared touch those tools myself, as if they were sacred. But that night, grief tore down every barrier. I spent hours fumbling awkwardly, my unsteady hands bending wires, dropping gems, muttering frustrated curses into the silence. My first creation, a tangled mess of metal and misshapen crystals, was laughable, but it didn't matter. It was mine, raw and real, a reflection of exactly how broken I felt inside. The next night, I found myself back at the bench again, then the night after, and the night after that. Slowly, my movements became less clumsy, my confidence stronger. Hours blurred into weeks. Each late night spent honing skills I'd quietly absorbed from watching Daniel. My pieces grew intricate, intentional, shimmering with a depth of feeling I couldn't articulate in words. Then one rainy afternoon, everything shifted. I'd been quietly sharing a few designs online, anonymously at first, terrified of rejection. But that day a small boutique owner named Liza messaged me, her enthusiasm palpable even through text. "I'm in love with your designs, so emotionally honest. I'd love to showcase them in my gallery opening next month. Would you be interested?" My heart raced so fast I nearly dropped my phone. It felt like Daniel himself was guiding me gently forward. Trembling, I replied, "Absolutely, yes." From that moment, my hidden creations found the spotlight, first in Liza's charming little shop, then featured in a Boston art showcase, then whispered about in private gatherings among collectors. Demand surged, quietly building beneath my family's radar. I'd stay awake late into the night, filling orders, answering emails, fueled by adrenaline and the comforting feeling that Daniel was somehow still beside me, urging me on. Months blurred into a whirlwind of secret success, of steadily growing confidence, hidden behind polite smiles during family dinners, where Harper's career achievements dominated conversation. They remained oblivious, dismissing my late nights as grief-induced insomnia rather than the forging of my future. Yet secretly, I thrived, carefully growing into someone strong, determined, unstoppable. Daniel's belief in me had been the first spark, my grief ignited the fire. But now, after the betrayal of the ring, my family's ignorance had become my armor, giving me the freedom to build my empire completely undetected. They'd regret underestimating me soon enough, because the moment to reveal myself was rapidly approaching, and I was more than ready. The day of the annual Whitaker family dinner was always filled with dread, but this year that dread felt different, sharper, colder, laced with the bitter taste of betrayal. As I slipped on my dark green dress, a sleek and elegant design Daniel had once said made me look unstoppable, I wondered if my family would even notice. Probably not. Harper would undoubtedly dominate the conversation, glowing as she detailed her latest yoga retreat, oblivious to the wreckage she'd left behind. I paused in front of the mirror, catching my reflection. My eyes were tired but defiant. This was a moment I'd quietly anticipated for months, but after what they'd done with Daniel's ring, any flicker of hope had been extinguished. Tonight was purely about survival, a final test of patience and self-restraint before the deal that would change everything became official. My phone buzzed softly, my assistant Chloe checking in. Meeting with the fashion house tomorrow confirmed. This is huge, Lauren. You've earned this. I exhaled slowly, calming my racing heart. Chloe had no idea just how huge it truly was. If everything went smoothly, my life would be irrevocably transformed. But tonight, first, I had to survive another brutal act in the Whitaker family drama. Arriving at my parents' sprawling brownstone in Beacon Hill, dread settled heavily in my stomach. The familiar scent of Mom's expensive candles and the soft murmur of polite conversation greeted me, all superficial comforts masking the cold reality beneath. Harper lounged dramatically in the parlor, surrounded by her usual audience of admirers, cousins and family friends, all hanging on to every exaggerated word. "Lauren, you made it," she drawled, flashing an insincere smile. "We weren't sure you'd show up after your little tantrum at brunch." I smiled thinly, resisting the urge to remind her exactly who had caused that scene. "I wouldn't miss it, Harper." She raised a skeptical eyebrow, sipping her wine. "Still upset over that silly ring, are we?" My fists clenched involuntarily, nails digging sharply into my palms, but I forced a steady voice. "The ring Daniel made for me wasn't silly, Harper. It mattered," she scoffed dismissively. "Oh please, you're just milking the tragedy now." Mom entered, eyes quickly assessing the tension. But instead of support, she simply sighed dramatically, clearly annoyed at my perceived dramatics. "Can we please have a peaceful dinner tonight? No more embarrassing scenes?" Dad, always a step behind her, nodded grimly. "Yes, Lauren, just let it go, please. It's exhausting." The words pierced me sharply. Let it go. As if Daniel's memory was something disposable, easily replaced or forgotten. But before I could respond, a loud ringing laughter echoed from the dining room, signaling it was time for dinner. Time to endure another endless evening of forced smiles and subtle cruelties. Taking my seat at the lavishly set table, I braced myself. Conversation flowed predictably. Harper's upcoming travels, Dad's golf tournament, Mom's latest charity gala, all comfortably superficial, none involving me. I was an observer, quietly chewing my resentment along with every bite of the perfectly cooked roast beef. Yet beneath my simmering anger, a newfound calmness settled. My family had no idea the quiet storm brewing inside me, no clue about the life-changing partnership awaiting me tomorrow. They thought this dinner, this familiar humiliation, was all I'd ever have. But they were wrong. Tonight might belong to their dismissive remarks and condescending glances, but tomorrow, the future, belonged entirely to me. The dinner was barely underway when the gauntlet of contempt began. Dad passed the breadbasket around the table, making eye contact with everyone except me before casually dropping the first grenade of the evening. "So, Lauren," he began with feigned curiosity, buttering a roll methodically, "have you finally settled on a real job, or are you still tinkering with that jewelry hobby?" A familiar heat crawled up my neck, and I struggled not to snap back instantly. Taking a deliberate sip of my water, I forced myself to maintain a neutral expression. "Actually, Dad, my jewelry line is doing really well." Harper snickered softly, barely hiding her amusement behind her wineglass. "Oh, come on, Lauren, are you still selling trinkets online? Isn't it time to, I don't know, grow up?" Mom laughed lightly, shaking her head with feigned concern. "You can't honestly expect to make a living stringing beads together forever." "It's not beads, Mom," I replied quietly, fighting the tremor of frustration in my voice. "My work has been featured in several galleries and magazines." Harper leaned forward dramatically, eyes wide in mock admiration. "Oh, magazines! Well, excuse us, Lauren's practically famous." Her sarcasm drew polite chuckles around the table, each one twisting deeper into me like tiny, sharp blades. My cousin Brenna glanced sympathetically my way, then quickly down at her plate, unwilling to risk becoming the next target. Desperate to steer the conversation away from myself, I turned pointedly to Harper. "How was your trip, Harper? Worth the cost?" Her eyes narrowed slightly at the jab, but she quickly recovered with a smile dripping sweetness. "It was life-changing, honestly. You should try traveling sometime, maybe get some perspective." My mother's laughter tinkled like glass. "Harper's right, Lauren, a change might do you good. Maybe you'd finally get past Daniel." The table fell suddenly silent, the tension thickening around us like a fog. Even Dad, normally oblivious, winced at the harshness of Mom's remark. My heart hammered painfully, the sting of Daniel's name hitting harder than ever. "I don't need to get past Daniel," I managed, voice strained yet defiant. "He's part of my life, part of me." Harper rolled her eyes, sighing dramatically. "And here we go again. You always have to play the grieving widow card, don't you? It's exhausting." Anger sparked, fierce and sudden. "Widow?" I repeated sharply. "We never even got the chance to get married because—" "Lauren, please," Dad interrupted sternly, voice firm and cold. "We've indulged this long enough. Daniel's gone, you need to move on. Your constant grief is becoming an embarrassment to this family." The cruelty stunned me, breath catching painfully in my chest. All eyes turned toward me expectantly, daring me to speak up, to fight back, knowing it would only further confirm their accusations of drama and instability. I swallowed hard, biting back tears. "Is that really what you think of me?" Harper leaned back triumphantly, eyes glittering with satisfaction. "Lauren, it's what everyone thinks. You're stuck, living in the past, holding on to nothing. Honestly, it's sad." The humiliation burned deeply, a pain both familiar and new. I looked around the table, at the smug expressions, the empty eyes, the polite masks concealing deeper judgment. In that moment, a decision crystallized within me. I would no longer seek validation from people incapable of seeing my worth. They thought they'd beaten me down, but beneath the pain, my resolve strengthened. They'd soon discover just how wrong they were about me. The room fell silent after Harper's words, every eye glued to me, awaiting a reaction. I sat frozen, pulse pounding in my ears, cheeks hot with a blend of rage and humiliation. Harper leaned back confidently, sipping her wine, as if savoring her final blow. My mother exchanged quick, uneasy glances with my father, clearly preparing for what came next. My father cleared his throat authoritatively, the heavy sound echoing in the tense silence. "Lauren, your mother and I have discussed this at length," he began formally, voice devoid of warmth. "Your constant need for attention, your refusal to move forward, it's become more than tiresome. It's damaging our family reputation, and we can't allow it any longer." I blinked in disbelief, words catching painfully in my throat. "Excuse me?" My mother jumped in swiftly, tone clipped, almost rehearsed. "We have been patient, Lauren. God knows we've tried to support you, but your behavior, especially the recent drama over the ring, well, it's too much." My chest constricted painfully. "You mean the drama you created by stealing from me?" Harper sighed loudly, rolling her eyes for maximum effect. "See, this is exactly why we're doing this. You never take responsibility." "Doing what?" My voice was small, vulnerable, hating myself for showing weakness but unable to stop. Dad fixed me with a steely gaze, delivering his verdict with chilling calmness. Lauren, you're officially cut off. Disowned, effective immediately. My stomach twisted violently, nausea rising with a vengeance. Disowned. The word echoed in my ears like a cruel chant. My breath came rapidly, panic clawing at my chest, suffocating me. You're, what? We've removed you from the family trust and the will, Mom said evenly, as casually as discussing weekend plans. Your keys to the family properties have been deactivated. Consider this a necessary step for everyone's peace. The table remained silent, my cousins and relatives exchanging uncomfortable glances, but saying nothing. They were complicit by their silence, unwilling to risk my family's wrath to defend me. Harper, ever the actress, dabbed dramatically at her eyes. This breaks my heart, Lauren, truly, but you're toxic, and we just can't deal anymore. Toxic. The word sliced into me, sharp and cruel. I felt the eyes of everyone at the table bearing down on me, their silent judgment pressing heavily against my chest. I stared at my plate, untouched food blurring as my vision clouded. All my life, I'd quietly endured their passive cruelty, their relentless attempts to diminish me. But this was something else entirely, a public shaming, a rejection so complete, so final, that it left me breathless with shock. Harper leaned closer, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear. Honestly, Lauren, we're doing you a favor. Maybe this will finally push you to get your life together. My heart hammered painfully. Tears threatened, but I forced them back, determined not to give her the satisfaction. I looked at my parents, searching their faces for any sign of remorse, any flicker of regret, but found nothing. They'd discarded me with ruthless ease, like I was merely a problem to be neatly swept away. Rising shakily, I pushed back my chair, gripping the table for balance. You've made yourselves perfectly clear, I managed, voice strained but firm. I won't waste another minute begging for acceptance from people incapable of love. As I turned toward the door, heart shattered, but pride intact, my phone vibrated sharply in my pocket. A call that would change everything, arriving with impeccable timing, just as my old life crashed spectacularly around me. I barely made it into the hallway before my phone buzzed again, rattling insistently in my trembling hand. I paused, breath shaky, pulse still hammering from the cruel dismissal I'd just endured. Everything felt surreal. The voices from the dining room blurred into meaningless noise behind me. The word, disowned, still echoed in my ears, harsh and unforgiving. But as I glanced at my phone screen, confusion swiftly replaced shock. Unknown number. Instinctively, I answered. Hello? Lauren Whitaker? A confident, clear female voice asked briskly, instantly commanding my attention. This is Cassandra Mills from Arquette & Blair. My heart lurched wildly in my chest. Arquette & Blair, the internationally renowned fashion house. Yes, this is Lauren, I replied cautiously, still disoriented. Cassandra wasted no time. I've just stepped out of a meeting where your collection was presented to our executive team. Your jewelry designs are exceptional. Exactly the fresh, emotionally resonant approach we've been searching for. My head spun wildly, her words barely registering at first. I leaned heavily against the hallway wall, trying desperately to ground myself. Thank you, I whispered, voice trembling. No, thank you, she said warmly. Lauren, we want you as our exclusive partner in launching next season's premier jewelry line. It's a significant deal, global exposure, full collaboration, a major press rollout. Are you available to meet tomorrow? I blinked rapidly, stunned into momentary silence. Arquette & Blair was the pinnacle. Brands spent decades chasing deals even half this prestigious. And now here I was receiving an offer directly from their head of partnerships. Lauren? Cassandra prompted gently. Are you still there? Ah, yes, I stammered, adrenaline spiking so intensely my fingertips tingled. Absolutely, I can meet tomorrow. Wonderful, she replied smoothly. My assistant will email you the details. And Lauren? Yes? This is just the beginning. Congratulations. As Cassandra hung up, my knees buckled slightly, forcing me to brace against the wall for support. Just moments ago, I'd stood broken and rejected, cast aside by my family like worthless trash. Yet now, a single call had shifted my entire reality, proving definitively what Daniel had always believed, that my worth existed far beyond the narrow, toxic judgment of my parents and Harper. Lauren? Harper's sharp voice suddenly broke through my thoughts, slicing through the dizzying euphoria. I turned slowly, still gripping my phone tightly, meeting her inquisitive, suspicious stare as she stood in the doorway, arms crossed defensively. "What now?" I asked flatly, unwilling to let her ruin this moment. She raised an eyebrow, eyes flickering curiously toward the phone. "Who was that? Your therapist?" I smiled bitterly. "Actually, Harper, it was Arquette and Blair, you know, the global fashion brand?" Her smug expression faltered slightly, doubt flickering across her face. "What are you talking about?" I stepped closer, voice clear and steady now, fueled by renewed strength. "They just offered me an exclusive global partnership to launch their next jewelry collection." Harper laughed nervously, disbelief etched into every feature. "You're lying, that's impossible." My mother and father appeared in the doorway behind her, faces confused, suspicious, the weight of their collective gaze pressed against me, but this time, it felt different. Empowering, almost. "I'm not lying," I said calmly, lifting my chin slightly. "While you were busy disowning me, the world recognized what you refused to see." Silence settled heavily around us, my family staring in stunned disbelief. They'd underestimated me, mocked me, cast me out, only to watch as their cruelty collided spectacularly with my triumph. Their moment of victory had been fleeting, mine was just beginning. For a long, surreal moment, my family simply stared, frozen in disbelief. The smug confidence drained rapidly from Harper's face, leaving her pale and uncertain. Mom blinked rapidly, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air, while Dad's expression grew stony with mounting embarrassment. "You're serious?" Harper finally managed, voice thin, eyes darting nervously between our parents. "Arquette and Blair actually called you?" I nodded slowly, savoring the stunned silence that followed. "Just now, actually. They're offering me an exclusive partnership to launch their upcoming jewelry line." The room erupted into an immediate flurry of reactions. Mom rushed forward, suddenly all smiles and fluttering hands. "Lauren, sweetheart, this is incredible news. Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I took a deliberate step backward, maintaining my distance. "You mean before you disowned me 10 minutes ago?" Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably, voice stiff with forced authority. "Lauren, clearly there's been some misunderstanding. We were speaking out of frustration. Family disagreements happen. Let's not blow things out of proportion." The rapid reversal in tone was almost laughable. Harper's cheeks burned scarlet, eyes flickering with barely concealed panic. "Lauren," she said urgently, dropping her arrogant facade. "We didn't mean it like that. Obviously, we still care about you." I stared at her in stunned disbelief, anger flaring hot and bright beneath my calm exterior. "Do you? Because less than 15 minutes ago, you said I was toxic, an embarrassment." Harper's face crumbled, desperately seeking support from our parents, who now stood awkwardly silent, their eyes averted, unable to meet mine. The hypocrisy was staggering. So brazen, so shameless that it bordered on absurd. For years they'd relentlessly dismissed my dreams, trivialized my grief, belittled my accomplishments. Yet now, faced with irrefutable evidence of my worth, they rushed to rewrite history, eager to claim a role in my success. I shook my head slowly, a bitter smile forming on my lips. This moment right here is exactly why I'm done. You never wanted me. You wanted a version of me that fit your image, and when I didn't conform, you tried to erase me. My mother's expression hardened slightly, her ingrained defensiveness returning. "Lauren, don't be dramatic. Families fight, but we move past it." "No," I corrected firmly, voice unwavering. "This isn't a fight, this was betrayal. You stole from me, you mocked Daniel's memory, you humiliated me and then disowned me publicly, without hesitation." Harper's eyes filled with desperate tears, genuine panic settling into her voice. "Lauren, please, you can't just cut us out." "Yes, Harper," I said quietly, meeting her gaze with icy certainty. "I absolutely can." She flinched visibly, the reality sinking in. Mom reached forward again, almost pleading. "Lauren, we're family, surely there's something we can do." I stepped back firmly, voice clear and calm. "Family doesn't do what you did. You chose Harper's vacation over my grief, your image over my dignity, so no, there's nothing you can do. Not anymore." Turning away, I felt an immense weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time I truly saw my family for who they were, and I knew with absolute clarity that I deserved more. I deserved honesty, loyalty, respect, all things they were incapable of giving. At the doorway I paused, turning back one final time. "You wanted me gone," I said softly. Now you have your wish." As I stepped into the cool night air, heart aching yet fiercely alive, I knew there was no turning back. The toxic bonds were severed, the script flipped, the past finally released. My new life, authentic, empowered, and free, began tonight. Leaving Boston behind felt like stepping from shadow into sunlight. Chicago welcomed me in a way I hadn't anticipated, with open arms and unconditional warmth. But no embrace felt quite as healing as the one waiting for me at Joan and Warren's doorstep, Daniel's parents, who'd always quietly supported me, even after we lost Daniel. The moment Joan saw me standing on her porch, suitcases by my side, her eyes softened with instant understanding. Without a word, she pulled me into a fierce, protective hug, as if sensing every betrayal and hurt I'd endured. Warren joined us quietly, resting his strong, reassuring hand gently on my shoulder. "You're home now, Lauren," Joan whispered, voice full of gentle certainty. For the first time in months, tears filled my eyes, not from anger or hurt, but from relief, from feeling finally safe enough to let go. "Thank you," I managed softly, voice breaking. Inside their cozy living room, surrounded by Daniel's childhood photos and familiar scents of fresh coffee and baked bread, I finally told them everything. They listened patiently as my story unfolded, their expressions shifting from disbelief to anger and finally to profound sadness. Warren shook his head quietly, eyes reflecting disappointment. "They never truly saw you, Lauren. Not the way Daniel always did. He loved you fiercely, exactly as you are. You deserved better." Joan gently squeezed my hand, eyes full of maternal warmth. "But it's their loss, sweetheart. They missed out on knowing an extraordinary woman." The ache of betrayal still lingered, but in that quiet room, surrounded by true family, it felt less sharp, less overwhelming. I breathed deeply, grateful to feel genuinely loved for once. No strings, no conditions. Over dinner that evening, as the sun cast golden light across the dining table, Joan smiled knowingly at me, her eyes full of pride. "Daniel always said your talent would take you places. He knew you'd shine. How fitting that it's finally happening." "It feels surreal," I admitted softly, cheeks flushed from praise I wasn't accustomed to hearing. Warren chuckled warmly. "Believe it, Lauren, you deserve every bit of success coming your way." That night, as I unpacked my bags in the cozy guest room they'd insisted would always be mine, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in years. Daniel's presence lingered softly in the photos on the bedside table, in the quilt Joan had lovingly placed at the foot of the bed. It was as if he was reassuring me, gently reminding me I was exactly where I belonged. But the truest comfort was the undeniable realization that family wasn't simply defined by blood. It was Joan's warm embrace, Warren's steady wisdom, Daniel's quiet, enduring love, moments of genuine connection, trust and respect. I sank into the soft mattress, exhaling slowly, feeling the burdens of my past slipping quietly away. Here I was truly seen, not as a burden or a problem, but as someone precious and valued, someone worthy of kindness and care. It was a powerful contrast to the cold cruelty of my biological family. Tomorrow I would begin the thrilling next chapter with Arquette and Blair, but tonight, beneath the gentle glow of the bedside lamp, my heart finally began to heal. I'd left Boston broken, betrayed, discarded, but here in Chicago, surrounded by love, I felt the first flicker of something far more powerful: hope. Rebuilding my life in Chicago wasn't just about changing locations. It was about crafting an entirely new reality, complete with sturdy boundaries designed to protect the healing heart I was carefully nurturing. As my partnership with Arquette and Blair blossomed into an exhilarating whirlwind of press events, gallery openings, and high-profile showcases, my phone inevitably buzzed more frequently, each notification threatening to disrupt the careful balance I'd finally created. Most messages were harmless congratulations from friends or polite inquiries from acquaintances suddenly eager to reconnect. But increasingly the messages were from Harper and my parents, first tentative, almost polite, then increasingly desperate and demanding as my visibility grew. Harper would alternate between curt apologies and frustrated attempts at guilt-tripping me into reconciliation, while Mom and Dad sent stiff, formal emails requesting that I put our family back together, as if their betrayal had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Each time I felt a surge of anger tempered by sadness. They still didn't understand the damage they'd inflicted. Still thought of my pain as disposable, something easily forgotten with enough distance or success. Finally, after weeks of mounting pressure, I called Harper, not out of obligation, but to firmly establish the new rules that would govern any possible future relationship. "Lauren?" she answered quickly, voice breathless, hopeful. "I need you to listen, Harper," I began quietly, keeping my tone calm but firm. "If we're ever going to have any sort of relationship again, you need to understand that the person you treated so poorly no longer exists." Harper hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "Lauren, I said I was sorry. What else do you want?" I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady despite the rush of emotions bubbling inside. "Respect, accountability, boundaries." She let out a frustrated sigh. "Fine, but can't we just put this behind us already?" "No," I said sharply, allowing an edge into my voice. "We can't just pretend you didn't betray me. I've spent years being minimized, overlooked, mocked. That ends now." There was silence on the line, tense and uncertain. Finally, Harper spoke softly, her voice unusually vulnerable. "Lauren, I know what we did was wrong. I never imagined you'd actually leave. It's like we lost you completely." "You did lose me," I responded clearly, voice steady, stronger than I'd imagined possible. "The old Lauren, the one who tolerated cruelty and disrespect, she's gone. The only Lauren you'll ever know again is one who demands honesty, kindness, and respect." Harper exhaled slowly, her voice small and cautious. "I understand." I paused, letting my next words carry their full weight. "I hope you do. Because until I believe you truly grasp how deeply you hurt me, I can't let you back into my life, and Mom and Dad need to understand the same." After ending the call, I felt a strange, quiet strength settle inside me. The boundaries I'd carefully built weren't walls designed to isolate. They were protective measures ensuring I'd never again allow someone else's cruelty to define my worth. That evening, Joan and Warren watched me quietly from the kitchen as I stared pensively out their window, deep in thought. Warren approached gently, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You okay, Lauren?" I turned, meeting his warm, steady gaze, and nodded softly. "I'm better than okay. I finally feel strong enough to protect the life I've built." His eyes shone with quiet pride. That's all Daniel ever wanted for. Standing there, wrapped in the quiet love and support of my chosen family, I felt my carefully built fortress of boundaries solidify. The past might always be part of me, but from now on, I alone would decide its power over my future. With my partnership at Arquette & Blair blossoming beautifully, my jewelry line became more than just a successful venture. It became a platform for something greater. For months, I'd grappled privately with how to truly honor Daniel's legacy, determined that his memory wouldn't be reduced to stolen rings or family betrayals. Now, finally, clarity had arrived, powerful and purposeful. After a long, thoughtful evening with Joan and Warren, I decided to launch the Daniel Whitaker Foundation, dedicated to supporting young artisans facing similar obstacles I once had: dismissive families, limited resources, lack of visibility. It felt right, deeply personal, a healing balm not just for myself but for others whose struggles echoed my own. The day of the foundation's launch, as I stood nervously in front of an intimate gathering of local artists, community leaders, and newfound supporters, my heart was filled with quiet pride. Daniel's photo sat prominently at the entrance, his gentle eyes and kind smile a steady reminder of why I'd created this space. Midway through the evening, a young woman named Kelsey approached shyly, her hands nervously twisting the hem of her sweater. "Lauren," she began softly, voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted to thank you. Your story, it gave me the courage to finally show my work publicly." Emotion tightened my throat, her quiet words resonating deeply. "I'm so glad," I managed gently. "You deserve to be seen." She smiled shyly, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. "You taught me it's okay to believe in myself, even if my family doesn't." In that simple statement, I felt something inside me shift powerfully. All the years spent overlooked, dismissed, minimized, suddenly they'd found purpose, transformed into fuel that now empowered someone else's dreams. Later, Joan stood beside me, squeezing my hand affectionately. "Daniel would be so proud of you, Lauren." Her words struck me deeply, settling gently into my chest like the comforting warmth of sunlight after a storm. "I hope so," I whispered softly. Across the room, Warren watched me quietly, his expression calm and thoughtful. Approaching slowly, he placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You've reclaimed the Whitaker name beautifully. Now it means something powerful. I smiled softly, absorbing the truth in his words. The legacy I was building wasn't shaped by bloodlines or family expectation. It was defined by kindness, courage, and authenticity. Daniel's legacy, my legacy, now belonged solely to me and those who truly valued it. That night, long after the guests had departed, I stood quietly in front of Daniel's photo. His gaze seemed clearer somehow, softly encouraging, silently reassuring. "We did it," I whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You're still changing lives." As I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with a message from Harper. This time, her words were sincere, tentative, humbled. "I'm proud of what you've done, Lauren. I'm sorry for everything. I finally understand." I stared at her words for a long, thoughtful moment. Forgiveness would take time, reconciliation even longer. But her acknowledgement felt meaningful, genuine, an honest first step. Smiling softly, I typed a careful response. "Thank you, Harper. Maybe someday we'll find a new way forward." As I stepped into the crisp evening air, breathing deeply, heart finally lighter, I realized I'd done more than reclaim Daniel's legacy. I'd reclaimed my own. And now, for the first time, my future felt limitless, vibrant, beautifully mine. Sitting alone at the lakeside park one tranquil afternoon, the Chicago skyline shimmering gently across the water, I felt a rare, perfect sense of peace. It had been almost a year since that devastating dinner, since betrayal had torn apart my carefully constructed world and forced me to rebuild it piece by painstaking piece. But now, beneath the gentle rustling leaves, breathing in the sweet scent of fresh grass, I finally understood something profound. I was enough. That realization, simple yet powerful, resonated deeply within me. For so long, I'd desperately chased my family's approval, believing my worth was something to be earned, validated externally. But now, in the quiet calm of the life I'd created, I knew with unwavering certainty that I needed no one's permission to feel worthy. My phone buzzed softly, breaking my peaceful contemplation. Joan's warm voice immediately brought a smile to my lips. "Hey, sweetheart. Warren and I thought you might join us for dinner tonight. We miss you." "I'd love to," I answered softly, heart swelling with gratitude. "I miss you too." After we hung up, my gaze returned to the sparkling water. Memories of Daniel drifting gently through my mind, not as a source of pain, but as comforting reminders of love, strength, and resilience. His presence had never truly left me. It had quietly guided each step, each painful lesson, each hard-won victory. Unexpectedly, my phone lit up again. A message from Mom. My heart gave a small, cautious flutter, but the familiar anxiety was gone. Her message was careful, sincere, restrained. "Lauren, if you're ever ready, we'd love a chance to reconnect. No expectations, just a chance." I considered her words thoughtfully, feeling neither obligated nor pressured. My response was calm, gentle, and entirely genuine. "I appreciate you reaching out. Someday soon, maybe we can talk. But we both know things have to change." Her reply was immediate, respectful, and humble. "We know. We'll wait until you're ready." Closing my eyes, breathing deeply, I felt an unfamiliar yet comforting sense of control. The power was finally mine to choose when, how, and if reconciliation would happen. I wasn't the frightened girl desperate for validation anymore. I was a woman who had reclaimed her life, her worth, and her happiness on her own terms. That evening, sitting around the warm dining table with Joan and Warren, laughter echoing through the cozy room, I felt utterly content. Joan caught my eye across the table, smiling gently. "Lauren, you seem so peaceful. It's beautiful." I smiled softly in return, feeling every word deeply. I finally realized my worth doesn't depend on anyone else. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely at peace. Warren squeezed my shoulder affectionately, his voice warm with pride. "You've earned every bit of it, Lauren." And he was right. I'd fought hard for this moment, through betrayal, heartbreak, and the agonizing journey of healing. But sitting here, surrounded by true family, I knew every step had been. I had discovered the powerful truth at the heart of my journey. True validation could only come from within, rooted firmly in authenticity, self-respect, and unwavering kindness. And finally, after everything, I was ready to live fully, joyfully, peacefully, and entirely on my own terms. Have you ever felt like your worth depended on someone else's approval? Like you weren't good enough unless someone else validated you? If my story resonated, I'd love to hear yours. Drop your experiences in the comments below. Your story matters, and you're never alone. If my journey spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who might need reminding that it's okay, no, essential, to define success and happiness on your own terms. Remember, the validation you truly need lies within you. Trust yourself, honor your journey, and never be afraid to set boundaries. Your worth isn't negotiable, and neither is your peace. Ask yourself, whose approval have I been chasing, and what freedom might I gain if I let that go? Reflect honestly on your answer, and when you're ready, share your truth. Because your voice, your journey, your worth, they all deserve to be heard. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and always choose yourself.